What is up, everyone? A new set is coming out in just a few days. So we have the top 5 new brews for Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Today we are on brew number 2. So we only have one more after this one, and this one is Mono White Artifacts. So let's check it out. Before we get into the deck tech, just a reminder, we have the early access streamer event on November 9th and 10th. I plan to be streaming over on Twitch from the 9th, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. PST. Hope you can make it out, and if you do end up missing it, fear not, I will be posting those games onto YouTube. So, yeah, hope to see you there. All right, so the mono white artifacts deck. I originally was thinking to do white black because there actually are quite a lot of good black artifacts in this set as well. But the more I thought about it, the black ones weren't that necessary. Most of the black artifacts got similar effects in the white artifacts. Plus white being mono white means you have better mana. You can play more like of the utility lands as well. And yeah, it just really kind of felt like you didn't really need the black splash in there. So let's take a look at the new cards. It's a lot of new cards from the set. So we'll have to see, how it plays out, but all these cards seem pretty strong, have a lot of good synergy. So I feel pretty good that there's some shell here. Maybe I missed a few existing white cards that could be slotted in here, but it looks pretty good so far. So right off the bat, let's take a look at some of the removal. So you got Dusk Rose Reliquary. It's 1 white mana to play an artifact. As an additional cost, though, you have to sacrifice an artifact or creature. It has Ward 2, and when it enters the battlefield, you exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So it's like a Soul Oblivion Ring, but it is 1 mana with a Ward 2. The only downside is you have to sacrifice something to play this. So you can't play it on turn 1. That is the downside, but we have a lot of artifacts that we don't care about that much or don't mind stacking. So you can, without too much trouble, you should be able to play this and maybe even have some upside, as we'll see. So other removal we got in here, Spring-Loaded Saw Blades. This is a new artifact that's 1 and a white. It's flash. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target tapped creature and opponent controls. So it doesn't have to be attacking, just tapped creature, and you can deal 5 and kill it. That means it kills Shieldred and things like that if they're tapped. It also has a craft ability, craft with artifact for 3 and a white. And it turns into a 5/5 artifact vehicle with the crew 1, which is pretty low crew. And you can tap 2 other artifacts you control, and then this becomes a creature. So you don't have to use the crew ability, you can just tap other artifacts to crew this. So yeah, that's pretty good. But sometimes we're gonna play this and we're gonna sack it with the Dusk Rose Reliquary to get another removal, and we'll still be happy because we already killed something. So yeah, either way, it's a good removal spell that can have a lot of upside. Other removal, that might be about it. We do have 1 Mightstone Weakstone. I think this card is good, and we could have more, but you don't really need that much mana in the deck, so I wasn't sure, if it's worth the for the kind of like ramp that it gives you. So it is a removal, and it can also draw you cards, so both of those are pretty good. So we'll have to just see. And then the last one that's kind of removal is this Unstable Glyph Bridge, 3 white, so it's about 5 mana, and when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, each player chooses a creature with power 2 or less, and then destroy all other creatures except the chosen creature. So basically it's a board wipe, but the opponent and you both get to keep 1 cheap creature. And then on the back side, if you can craft it with an artifact and flip it, turns into this 5/3 flying artifact golem. Whenever opponent casts a spell during their turn, they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. And each opponent who attacks you or planeswalker you control, they can't cast spells. So they have to choose attack or cast spells. If they cast a spell, they can't attack. If they attack, they can't cast. So yeah, it kind of puts them in a bind there. They have to make a decision. So pretty sweet. Kind of locks the opponent out of doing a whole lot on their turn. Pretty decent body, 5/3 with flying that you got on the back of a board wipe. So yeah, pretty cool. Notably, it does interact with planeswalkers as well. So maybe you would want to try to put a few white planeswalkers in this deck, like the Wandering Emperor or something like that, so that the opponent can't attack them. Some idea at least. So yeah, that's the main removal you got in this deck. But we do have a lot of other value, which kind of makes up, like on top of the removal, the value that we're getting. The opponent will have to spend their removal, or they might have to trade creatures or things like that. So, yeah, even though I think it's a pretty good number of removal spells. We got what, 4, 8, 12. So it's still pretty good. But I guess some of the black decks in standard are playing a little bit more than that, so it just really depends. And then some other notable new cards. Market Gnome. It's white for a 0/3, so decent blocker early game. But when it dies, you gain a life and draw a card. So 1 mana, gain a life, draw a card, basically. Save you some damage from the opponent. Maybe it's kind of like gain 4 life, draw a card. And also, if it is used with the craft ability, then you still get the life and draw a card. That's the second part there. So, you know, you can play this on 1. Turn 2, you can sack it with the Dusk Rose, and you get the life and draw the card and exile the opponent's creature. So that's pretty good. You can activate some of your craft abilities like the Spring-Loaded Saw Blades or the Unstable Glyph Bridge to craft with that Market Gnome. You get the card, and you get the payoff of the craft ability. So quite a lot of utility out of that Market Gnome. Pretty, you know, really good 1-drop. Other notable creature is the Fabrication Foundry. 1 and a white for a kind of like a mana rock. Taps for white. And spend this mana to only cast an artifact, spell, or activate ability of an artifact source. So ramps you pretty early. I said creature. I'm not sure why I said creature, but notable new card that is like a mana rock, 2 mana mana rock. And for 3 and a tap, exile 1 or more artifacts you control with mana value X and return target artifact mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the second ability, maybe you can do something like exile Spring-Loaded Saw Blades, return Dusk Rose Reliquary to the battlefield. You don't have to pay the additional cost because you didn't cast it. Or, you know, if you have like a 3 or 4 drop, you can exile that and get back your Spring-Loaded Saw Blade. It will do the 5 damage. It's something like that. So enter the battlefield, trigger something. So if you want to kind of shuffle around the cards on the like what you have on the battlefield for something in the graveyard, you can get the enter the battlefield effect again. And actually it says X or less, so you could even exile Spring-Loaded Saw Blades, get a Spring-Loaded Saw Blades from your graveyard, and do the activated ability, so you don't really lose anything in that trade. You just get the enter the battlefield effect again. So pretty useful. You know, it's kind of a late game thing to do, but still something interesting with the artifacts we got going on. Another new one we got, Clay-Fired Bricks. This is kind of like a Replenish, I think it's called. It's like a classic white spell that draws you a card and gains you a little bit of life. But this one instead, it gets you a Plains card from your deck and gains you 2 life. And then it's an artifact on the battlefield that you don't mind sacking for your Dusk Rose Reliquary or one of your craft abilities. This one also has a craft ability for 5 white, which makes 2 artifact gnome creatures that are 1/1s, and then also gives an anthem effect, +1/+1 to all your creatures. So I think more likely you're just going to take the land and the life, and you're going to sack this for some other effect. But if it's really late game, maybe you're going to pay that 7 mana. And then of course, since we're playing artifacts and we don't care that much about our our colors, we can play the Iron Crag. This is another 2 mana rock, legendary. It gives us about 5 early mana rocks to ramp us. Grand Spider, also quite good. It's 3 colorless. For 2/4 with reach, it enters the battlefield and creates a Power Stone token, which ramps you again. It has activated ability that lets you look at the top cards of your library to find artifacts, which we can do. So yeah, it really just fits in well with this deck overall. And because the craft abilities costs a little bit more, it's nice to have the extra Power Stone mana or the extra, ramp that is going on here. And then finally, this is one of your big win cons. The Thousands Moon Smithy, 2 white, enters the battlefield, create a gnome artifact soldier creature token with this power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts or creatures you control. So we're going to have a bunch of these sitting on the battlefield, like Dusk Rose, like this one, the Clay-Fired Bricks, the Spring-Loaded Traps, Fabrication Foundry, etc. Most of these are entering the battlefield, doing something, and it's sticking around. And then so your Thousand Moons Smithy is going to make a token that is like a 5/5 because you've got 5 artifacts on the battlefield. And then at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you tap 5 untapped artifacts, then you can transform this. So if you have 5 of these lying around, you can tap them to transform this, and you get a land, which is taps for white mana, and it says whenever you cast an artifact or creature using the mana from this land, create another one of those tokens, which has its power equal to the number of artifacts. So yeah, you just get to every turn basically generate another really huge token. So that's pretty insane win con. Unless the opponent's running land destruction, they probably can't get rid of this. So it's just gonna kind of pop off and go crazy if you can get this flipped. The other big win con we got here is the Millennium Calendar. This one is a little bit of a dream, but it's a 1 mana artifact, comes in, pretty early. It's just passively getting bigger and bigger. Every time you untap 1 or more permanents during your untap step, you put that many counters on the Millennium Calendar. And then you can pay 2 and tap to double the number of counters. And if there are 1,000 more counters on this artifact, sacrifice it, and the opponent loses 1,000 life, so you win the game basically. So you have to, I think people calculated it, you pretty much have to double this 9 times to win the game. So, or maybe it was double it 8 times. You win on turn 9, you double it 8 times. So, it's a bit of a slower win con. But I assume that you'll have a few extra mana here or there, especially when you get your Foundries down, your Iron Crags, things like that. So playing this on turn 1 means you have some artifacts to tap or potentially sacrifice if you want to. And then you can just slowly accumulate counters on this each turn, and then you can start doubling it maybe around turn 4, turn 5. And then after, 8 or 7 or 8 doublings, you're going to get to your goal and you're going to win the game. So it's a little slow, but it is a win con. And as long as you're kind of killing the opponent's creatures, removing their stuff, gaining life, then you're going to probably slow the game down enough to where you can win with that. And then the final card that I didn't mention yet is Chimley, the Inner Sun, 6 mana, legendary artifact. Spells you control can't be countered. And at the beginning of your end step, discover 5. Discover 5 is kind of like Cascade. So you will look at the top of your library until you find a non-land card, mana value 5 or less, and you can cast it for free. So everything in the deck is 5 or less. If we can get this down, then we get a free spell every turn. Seems pretty good. And again, we want to have 5 artifacts on the battlefield for our Thousand Moon Smithies. So yeah, that's pretty good. So that's it. And of course, the lands, you can play Field of Ruin, you can play Blast Zone, you can play Mirrex because, it's mono white. We don't need that many colored sources to make everything work. A lot of our spells are colorless. So yeah, we don't really care that much. And then only 24 lands because we have a lot of ramp. We have Fabrication Foundry, Iron Crag, Grand Spider. and even Might Stone if you want to count that. So pretty good amount of ramp in the deck. So that's it. That's the mono white artifacts. Yeah, I think the clock is probably too slow. Well, we got to try it out, of course. It's a new card. It's interesting. This 1000-man smithy is probably the way to win most of the time. And so, you know, if it turns out it's too slow, we'll cut these 3. We'll add maybe another smithy. We'll add a couple other cards and see how it goes. But I'm pretty hyped about it. I think it seems, the power level seems up there. Seems on par with what's in standard right now. I mean, mainly you just got to be able to kill Shieldred, which both of these removals can. Even the Sweeper can. And even this Might Stone, Weak Stone can. So we have Shieldred answers. Yeah, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. We're gonna have try these out on the early streamer event. So I hope I can catch you some of you there. And until next time, go out there, have some fun, and see ya.